All right. So
we're going live. We're live.
We're live.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, it's great to be here at the Greater Everyday Podcast. We just got a 1 minute countdown so that if you're following us on Facebook Live, we want to encourage you to pull up a chair, tell a friend, come through, tell us what's going on, tell us where you're coming from. We're so grateful for all the love that we've gotten over the year that we've been doing this podcast from all around the world. So let us know where you're coming from and what's on your heart. And we look forward to any questions that you have or comments that you have as we go through this conversation. For everyone that's checking out the podcast, as a regular podcast, please, feel free to reach out to us. You can always email us at greatereverydaypodcast@gmail.com.
Mm-hmm.
So we look forward to you being with us, connecting with us. And today we're going to continue an amazing conversation, and we have incredible guests right here.
Mm-hmm.
So officially, we don't want to welcome everyone to the Greater Everyday Podcast. This is the place where we deal with the real issues. We don't demonize anyone. That's our commitment. We demonize no one. We deify no one. We just deal strictly and clearly and honestly with the real issues. And we have started a conversation about cultural humility.
Yep.
And so we're really, really honored that we have with us right now Deacon Dan Hines, Dr. Hines, who's here with us. He's a part of our cultural humility team. And so we're going to introduce him. But before we do, my name's Will, and I'm right here in the studio with my brother.
I'm Anton. What's up, everybody?
And we've got
Tasha.
That's right. But lovely wife, Tasha. So we've got the good enough parenting. We've got the Greater Everyday program team, the
It's
GEP,
stuck in your mind. Yes.
the GEP team.
Yes.
So we're
See what you did there.
yeah, man. Hey, we need help. So but we're really excited. Last week we got the opportunity to have Patrick and Ruth, who are elders and elders' wife here in the Potomac Valley community and in the Potomac Valley Church. And they head up this cultural humility team. And they told us a little bit about their cultural humility team. And over the next several weeks, we're actually going to have several members from the team come on, tell us a little bit about themselves, tell us a little bit about the work that's being done to really foster healthy communication and forward direction for us as a community that we hope is something that can contribute to others, because we're definitely in a place where there's a lot of concern, a lot of turmoil, a lot of struggle around these issues of culture and pride. And we believe that it's important that with issues of culture, as with all issues, we need to humble ourselves before God and treat everyone with mutual respect.
Yeah, I think it was I don't know about you guys. I think it was a great beginning to the series.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of interaction from everybody out there. So thank you guys. And, I'm looking forward to keeping it moving.
Absolutely.
Yeah, me too. I'm actually excited to have the Hines on, man. This is so
Hines.
Great. Yes. The Dr. Hineses. You guys are like the real life.
Brenda
she'll be what?
Brenda will be here shortly. So
okay.
She's gonna do
Awesome.
the same screen with me.
Awesome. Well, we'll save the embarrassing how'd you meet questions for when she comes, okay? So that'll be great. But you guys are like the real life Huxtable family.
Mm-hmm.
We got
cool.
Yeah, you are. That's how I describe you to other people. I never told you that. But that's who you are to me. So we used to what is the name of that TV show? The Cosby's. Thank you. How did I forget that?
Yeah.
But
let's not go into why you forgot that. Keep talking. Keep going.
I must have blocked it out.
Yeah.
But what was amazing about the show is you got to see Black people who were well-to-do and who were great in their society and had great family life. And that's how we look at you guys. We're like, wow, these people have influence in their communities. And, you're a dentist and she's a doctor and she got called away to go deliver babies. And I'm like, you know what? That's something the Huxtables would do. I'm like, this is so cool to have the real live Huxtables with us.
Yep.
So welcome.
All right,
Very
thank you. Yeah, our kids have gotten that Huxtable thing when they were in school.
Yeah.
Yep. See, it's real.
It's real. So it wasn't just us. That's good. That's good.
Are you in the basement listening to like John Coltrane and
No. my personality isn't as vibrant as Bill Cosby, so.
Okay.
Well, no one's is.
So, well,
Okay, I'm sorry to go there.
well,
I'm the one that did it. It's okay.
hey, but all I can say is, Dan, we're super grateful that you're here, and we're super grateful to get to know you. Really, for everyone in our listening audience to get to know you, and we'd love to just ask you, just tell us a little bit about yourself, about where you're from, kind of what you do. Give us a little bit of your background.
All right. Well, I grew up in Detroit, Michigan, and went to the famous Cass Tech High School, along with not along with, but some of our famous alumni, Diana Ross and David Allen Greer, and some others.
Wow.
And I came to the DC area to go to college at Howard University, rocking the Bison. And and then from there, I went back to Michigan for dental school, where I met my lovely bride, and we moved to. I moved from Michigan to Washington D.C., and that was back in '88. So from there, I've been practicing dentistry in this area, and I have a lot of famous patients too.
Hey, Dr. Dan is our dentist, so I just want to say you are an incredible dentist, man. And
Yes, you are.
A lot of notable patients.
Hey, we're super grateful. You take great care of us.
Yes, thank you. And so I've been practicing there since like '89, and still do. I live in Fredericksburg with my wife, and used to be 3 kids, but they're grown and they're all in different areas. One in Michigan, one in Philly, and one in California. So we're now empty nesters. And
congratulations.
Congratulations. I need a clap emoji or
I
something
know, right?
around here.
We
you
all
should get
try to
like
get there.
you know, you get like a clock from your job and you do like 25 years.
Yes.
You get like 19 years. You should get like, I don't know, like a Food Line card or something.
You can finally go buy the food you want to eat.
Like a BJ's golden membership or something that when they get out of there, because all the money you spent in food and electricity and
yes.
stuff. So.
Yes.
Yeah, I just was joking with my daughter. They got their stimulus checks, and I'm like, where's my cut?
Exactly. I'm just saying. You need to share some of that love.
I'm sure she laughed when you said, "Where's my cut?"
Yeah, she laughed. She told me all the stuff she's spending on, so it wasn't included.
Wow.
So, Dan, what made you want to become a dentist? What inspired you to do that?
One of my older brothers married a dentist, and so I was originally going to go into accounting. And so he's an accountant, and apparently accounting wasn't so hot back then. And so he advised me to look into dentistry. And so I did start taking science classes. I was in high school at the time, and I liked it. And so I just started pursuing it, and every step of the way, it seemed to work out. It's a profession where you work with your hands a lot. It's I like the idea of healthcare, but I also didn't want to be in large settings. I like the idea of being in a small business. So it all just seemed to work out and come together, and it's been a good fit as a profession, and get to do a lot of artistic type of stuff too. So it keeps it interesting. So it's been working out.
That's awesome.
Dan, why DC?
Because I went to Howard, so I got a chance to live in DC, and I had lived in Detroit, and start weighing the two, and I like DC better, and I'm proud to be from Detroit, but the weather's a little better here.
Slightly.
And, it's sort of my wife Brenda, who just came in, and we can bring her in a second. but she's from New York City. And so this way we're, kind of midway between our hometowns.
Mm.
I'm going to rearrange a little bit so that Brenda can come in the picture. Is that okay?
Oh, awesome.
All right,
That'd
that's
be great.
Okay. So we can, let me see. Let's just do this. I'll just take him out a second so he can get a second.
While Dan's going there, why don't we take a look over at Micah chapter 6?
Sounds good.
As we're talking about cultural humility,
let me pull it up for you.
The scriptures inform everything that we do. So that's the basis for our conviction, and the basis for this podcast is that our faith informs our actions. And in Micah chapter 6 and verse 8, it says, He has shown you, O mortal, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? To act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. And, the idea of engaging justice is God's idea. Like this is from God, the call to justice. And, sometimes people can be disparaging about social justice. And they say, that's not a biblical conviction. That's not a spiritual prerogative. Justice is from God. God is the generator of justice. He is the architect of justice. He's the author of justice. And he calls us to act justly. And he calls us not only to act justly, but to love mercy, to not simply stand up for what's right, but also to make every effort to reconcile, to reconcile with others. I think sometimes, as we're talking, some people that are drawn to justice are drawn to truth, but sometimes people that are truth tellers have a difficult time with grace and a difficult time with forgiveness and reconciliation. And so there's a dynamic tension here between the idea of justice and also mercy. And then God rounds out the thought by saying, and to walk humbly with your God, to recognize that God is in heaven, we're on earth, we're just people. Everybody's messed up. There's no one righteous, not even one. And we need to fear God. And so I think that really gives us the right perspective. And so that was a huge part of the prerogative and the kind of the thinking for this cultural humility group is they said, look, we need to call the church to act justly. We need to call our community to love mercy, but we need to engage an attitude of humility, and humility as we navigate the sometimes tumultuous, sometimes terrific, kind of landscape of culture. Because people have really strong views about their culture because it's their culture.
Yeah. And so let me bring them back in because I want to challenge all four of you guys with something. So Brenda's here, so let me get her back on. Hey guys.
She is.
Brenda.
Hi. Sorry I'm late.
You have a great excuse. You have a great excuse.
Good. Yeah. How are y'all doing?
We're doing great.
Doing great. Thank you.
We're so grateful to have you here with us.
Yeah.
And we're so excited about having this conversation, learning a little bit about you guys as you guys are part of the Cultural Humility team, and just learning just about you as a family and you as people.
Oh,
But Anton's got a challenge for us. So let's hear
we,
Anton's
you guys heard. Could you guys hear what he was just saying a little bit ago?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so we were talking about you brought up social justice, right? And I think not the problem, but when you talk about justice, I think no matter where you come from or your background or whatever, I think that justice is easy, fairly, right? I think the problem sometimes is, especially for, since we're in the realm of Christianity, we talk about Christians and, we get kind of our standard from God and from the Bible. The issue I see is that social keeps changing because societies change. The rules change. Things that were accepted 10 years ago are, weren't accepted. Now they are. So social keeps changing. So I think the problem is that as things change, like you get used to a certain way, you did this, you did that, good or bad. And I'm not, that's a whole nother story. What's good, what's bad, what's evil, what's right. I'm just talking about just change over a community.
Right.
And so I think that because we haven't gotten to the part where people can just be humble and say, oh, okay, this is it. We're doing this now.
Right.
Okay. I think a lot of times people have issues saying like, well, like, wow, it was like this for 50 years. Now we got to change it. Now, okay, we're accepting this as a society now. And I think that's where the issue is. And I'm not, again, I'm not talking about what's good or bad, but I just think when you're talking about people's individual family discussions about what they need to talk to their kids about, things that they're, when you guys were talking about your son going to high school, what he was going to see that was different now. The Hines' family, all the kids are grown up now. So now they're going through different challenges. His kids are going to start having kids now. So,
and they do,
so
the
things,
they working on that.
So the things that like they thought that was good for society, when their grandkids get older, it's going to be something totally different. And that doesn't make them bad, because they might stop and say, whoa. It's not how it was when I was raising my sons and my daughters. Y'all doing this now? How do we get humble when things are just changing so fast?
Yeah, that's great. And that's what we have the Hines.
How do we get humble?
How do we get humble?
I wanted them to kind of address it. They took that whole thing and dumped it right on you.
Deacons.
Seriously, how are we supposed to answer that?
Acts chapter 6. Acts chapter 6.
One of the things that does humble me is the fact that things do change so much. And so, even from the sense of technology, learning how to use certain apps and other things that I didn't grow up doing, so when things change and socially, you find yourself not knowing, and it's humbling. If we're trying to be fair, it's very humbling. I think in the past, a lot of the problems was that when things were changing, and they've always been changing, the lack of fairness and the lack of humility was the problem. And so now people have more voices. There are more outlets, more forums like this podcast, and so people are speaking out on more things. And so it is forcing humility on the powers that be. And so change creates, to me, humility.
Well, I think that like the issue, I don't want to say the issue, but when, like you talked about, when it's fair, then everybody's on board with it. Right. But when you talk about like the challenges, like we talked about last week with the Joneses and some of the conversations that they were having, and I'm sure that they've had as well, we're talking about things that might not necessarily be fair,
right?
That people just expect, because everything, we're not doing things as a society. We're just kind of selectively picking things and saying, well, this should be included. This should be included. And we talk about, like, for example, racial justice. That's something that like Dan said, everybody should be on board for, because we're talking about just things. We're not talking about somebody being inferior or superior. We just want things fair. Right? But what happens when it's just, well, somebody said, okay, well, I think for society, everybody's house should be red.
Right.
And that's what society's going. We're like, well, I don't want to do that. I want to keep my house the way I want to keep my house. But no, this is what society's saying. So now you got to paint your house red. And if you don't, now you're grumpy about it. Now you're the problem. It's not that I disagree. Can we just talk about it a little bit? Right. Can it not get forced down, forced at me? And so I think that's where people, like, you just turn around and boom, something's different. And because of technology, because everybody has a voice, several things are being thrown at you so fast, and you can't really, as a family or as a community, process everything. Because if you look at the news and things like that, we're fighting about everything at the same time. And it's so difficult to have conversations. I think the first step is creating a platform like we have with the deacons here, so we can just have a place to say, okay, we've identified that there are a lot of issues that are going on out there. how do we even begin to do this? But I just think right now it's like life is so overwhelming for people, and then we got old COVID-19 to throw in too.
We do.
You know what I mean? Like 2020 would have been crazy without COVID.
Right.
You know what I mean? If you just take everything that happened with Ahmaud Arbery and then up in Minnesota, like those things, and then you throw coronavirus on top of that. Wow.
Yeah. It was intense.
Mm-hmm.
But here we are. So what do you think, Brenda?
First thing that comes to mind is be slow to speak, quick to listen. And as disciples, we have platforms. They don't have to be huge platforms. They're small platforms. I dialogue with a colleague of mine who I actually just left at the doctor's lounge all the time. And he's from Poland, and he's a Republican. And but he doesn't understand. I think it's something you said earlier, Anton, the way he was brought up, what he was culturally raised in. He doesn't understand things like, why are they pulling this from society? Why is Huckleberry Finn racist? So I had to explain to him some things that my children experienced when they came home and said, Mom, this book has the N-word in it. So Dr. Pytek, he doesn't mind me saying his name, I'm sure. He and I we love each other. I have to love him. He loves me. We share lots together. So I can say his name. We share medicine and we share politics, although we don't agree. But the platform
that's outstanding.
We all have is that we can educate. And so for Dr. Pytek, who doesn't understand why Huckleberry Finn has to be pulled, I can explain to him, this is the problem. It says the N-word, it offended my child in school. And he said, oh, well, I read it in school and no one ever said anything. There were Black children in my class. No one ever said anything. I said, well, maybe the culture then was that you couldn't speak up. But the culture now, all these different venues, as Dan talked about, the different avenues to be able to dialogue and now put things out there for people to see, you have more of a dialogue. Back then, it was more taboo. You couldn't speak up. So I think that justice, yes, we have to have justice for all. And it's a little difficult when you have a certain group of people who feel like we have justice. What's the problem? They don't understand the problem. So you can't look at them with hatred. You have to try to educate. And there are lots of people who just need to be educated. There are a select group of people who don't want to be educated no matter what. And they're going to stick with, these are the way things need to be. But there are a fair amount of people on both sides that are willing to listen, and you can chisel down that wall that they had developed over the years, and the concepts of what's justice and what's racially fair, that may not be racially fair. It's just what they've been taught, what they learned. So I think it's a great dialogue that we're having tonight, just so we can let people see, that we love everyone as Christians, and we have platforms, and we have to use our platforms every day to help show people God's love and to help people understand what that looks like. So.
Yeah, because we wrote a pretty strong letter to the school about Huckleberry Finn, and I'm like, I didn't even know Huckleberry Finn had that in it. And the reason why, I never read it in school, because my teachers would have never, they must have screamed that out of our library. Predominantly Black community I grew up in, and I never read that. And I'm like, why didn't I read it? It's supposed to be a classic. But I see why now, because when our kids got in school and it was shared in one of their classes, and they came home with that complaint, and I'm reading the book, and I'm like, whoa.
Yes.
Yeah,
what is this?
It's like an icon,
Yeah.
But anyway, so, more people are speaking. That's just an example. And this happened like 20 years ago. But nowadays, people are very, very, very sensitive just about everything. And we're speaking up. We're not, back then we wrote a letter, but now, it's all kind of ways to attack issues. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what, guys? I really appreciate what you guys are sharing, and because it can be hard to have these type of conversations with people who don't agree with you.
Yeah.
So even as you're talking, Dr. Hines, actually that's both of you.
Yeah, I'm about to
as
say.
you're talking, Brenda, about your coworker. Stop on Huxtable. As you're talking about
yes,
no.
Which one are you talking to? Pick one.
As you're talking about your coworker today, and you're talking about how you guys don't agree at all on politics and certain things like this, even on what's fair and what's justice. How do you have those types of conversations without them being contentious?
Absolutely. That's a great question.
Yeah.
Very gently, like you said, respectfully and gently, just so that I'm not as politically savvy as Daniel, and so I don't watch the news as much, and I don't keep up with all of the politics. So Daniel keeps me informed, and I'll watch snippets here and there. But Dr. Pytek, he's inundated by it, and so he'll ask me questions. What do you think about this? And so I will share honestly and fairly and gently. But I feel sorry. I feel like I need to do a little bit more to reach him. So today I shared a little snippet of the Bible with him today, and I shared a humorous story, and then I shared the Bible and why I shared it. Well, it's a long story, but anyway, we talked about the Bible, and so he knows that I'm a Christian, and I think he wants to learn more. So he's open, but he doesn't necessarily agree. And I try not to, just be disrespectful to his views, but I understand why he has those views. I think that keeps us from going to blows. But yeah, it's just open dialogue, and yeah, and I think that's being respectful of his position, and he's respectful of mine, and he will say, "I just don't understand." And then I realized, wow, you really don't get it, and that's having the humility that he doesn't understand, and it's not from a place of I don't know, superiority. It's just from a place of this is how I was raised, and just trying to show him differently. Yeah. So yeah. It doesn't. We don't argue. We don't go to blows, Tasha, or anything like that. But
that's good. That's good because you guys actually know where all the spots are. You know all the pressure points. Doctors going to blows could be really problematic.
Yes, it could be.
It could be. But I really appreciate just the fact that you're doing this in your life. So this is not like conceptual, because a lot of times people talk about talking to people, but they talk about talking to people without talking to people and talking to your coworkers and talking to a peer, as opposed to, a lot of times we can have conversations with people that we feel like maybe they're not intellectually as advanced as we are, or maybe they're much more intellectually advanced in our own mind. Because we're like, we just need to learn, we need to teach. But I really appreciate that you're having this very horizontal relationship with your coworker who thinks differently than you, and you're practicing cultural humility at work.
Yes.
And I think that's really, really powerful. One of the challenges we have, though, is we are also trying to figure out how to practice that at church, because, whereas, with a coworker, you can say, well, all right, they're not a part of my active community. We might see each other at work, but they're not a part of my church community. But in our church community, we have people with a diversity of views as well. And the same views that, the Dr. Pytek you're referring to we have people in our community that also have those same views. So how do we do that at work? How do we do that at church? How do we have these culturally humble conversations?
That's a good one. Well, from our cultural diversity group, one of the biggest things that impacted me was when we each told our stories. individually,
Mhm.
our life stories, however we want to tell it. And the biggest learning experience I got is it's a way to keep everyone humble about their neighbor, because people that I've known for 20 years, 10 years, 5 years, interact with them in church every week. Some major details of their life I had no clue about. If I were to guess, their upbringing, whether it was their socioeconomic status or, their family status, I would have been wrong, But by hearing them tell their story, then I gained a lot of appreciation for like who they are. It's like putting a puzzle together. And for me to tell my story was enlightening to me. And so it was enlightening to everyone else because it made you think about, what has gotten me to the point I am, all the various details in my life. And so telling our story and hearing others tell their story creates a lot of empathy and understanding. And too often we don't know about our neighbors, and it's a stage for us to be judgmental, and we can fill in the blanks however we want, and generally we're wrong, because we make assumptions.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So that's not being humble. So, yeah.
I remember a movie popped in my head. I'm sorry, I'm a kind of the, believe it or not, the humorous one. But don't talk to it. But remember the Titans. I don't know if you remember a second where one of they were forced to sit down from the opposite race and sit down and find out about each other.
Yeah.
And one of the players asked the other player. He said, "Do you have what's your father's name?" He said, "Oh wait, you do have a daddy, don't you?" So I don't know if you remember that scene.
Yeah.
He's made the assumption that he did not have a father in the house just because he was Black, and so we make assumptions about each other. So I think Dan's point is well taken. That getting to know each other, you know how the movie ends. They end up being very good friends, white and Black alike, and playing together, playing Forge United. And I think a lot of that had to do with being forced to tell each other their story, get close together. And that's a part. If you're willing to listen, again, I think you have to be willing to listen. And unfortunately, in the church and outside of the church, we have instances where we're just not willing to listen. So we can come from the vantage point of being able to listen and have some humility. We go a long way.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I've heard in common, with the Joneses and now the Hines is you have to, I know I know the Joneses mentioned this when I was talking about getting triggered, but you have to have like a steel resolve because like you guys are hearing all of these people come and talk to you all the time. And I know you guys get it. You guys have been, kind of doing like an expanded version of this for like 20 years. Right. So I'm sure over your time, you've heard some things where you're like, let me take this robe off real quick.
It triggered me.
Yeah.
Let me breathe.
Yeah. And I think that like, if you go into a situation, it's something I learned as a police officer. I was, as you would say, triggered a lot my first few years. And I remember my father telling me like, yeah, get over it. You got a job to do. You got to get over it. Yeah, people to save. That's what you wanted to do. You got to do it. And so it helped me to just like it go in one ear and out the other. And I think that like some people look like that. They like the fact that like even if you're telling their stories, that like if they tell their story, you're just automatically going to come to your side. Like, okay, I heard your story. You're still wrong, but let's talk about why you're wrong. Right. You know what I mean? And so I think that like if we are so quick to be upset, if we could just take a moment like they're saying and just, okay, I processed it. I'm not going to go off. I'm good. I took a break. Maybe you could go walk the dog or something like that. Okay, I'm back. let's talk. You know what I mean? So I think you just have to be, kind of like mentally, spiritually tough, because you're just gonna, like the Joneses talked, like they take a beating. And I know you guys can probably speak to that. Like after talking to so many people, helping people with their relationships and, converting so many people, I know it must give you guys a real beating.
Nah, it's fun. No, you know what it does though?
I thought we were being honest here. What happened?
I was just kidding.
No, what happened?
It definitely does build a bank of empathy. I realize that when I'm talking to somebody that I don't understand, if I have the heart, even just the eyes, to be able to see them through Jesus's eyes, to try and understand where they're coming from, it helps me to have empathy. I look at them and I'm like, okay, I just want to understand. I don't want you to understand me. I just want to understand you.
Seek first to understand instead of to be understood.
Yes. And then that person becomes a person to me, and even though they don't agree with me and I don't agree with them, I can see that person is a human being, and that they have a heart and that they have feelings. And even if I don't understand those feelings, but it's good to be able to listen to where those feelings come from. It's good to be able to listen to how they learn to think the way that they think, so that I can empathize with them. And then from that place, there's like what you guys are sharing about, there's a place where there's no judgment, and the person feels safe.
Right. Yeah.
I can picture your coworker being like, you know what, she's not going to judge me. So I can tell her all the stuff I'm thinking and she's not going to judge me. And she doesn't even have to agree with me. And she can respect where I'm coming from, even though we don't agree. I think that's the key. It's just having empathy and seeing people through Jesus's eyes. Jesus looked at people and he had compassion, and he looked at them and he looked at them out of love.
And I think you want to be a safe place for people to be able to ask crazy questions.
You do.
I mean, in your example of, remember the Titans, that's a really offensive question. But at least there was a place of safety where it's like, all right, I have a crazy question. Let me ask it. Now, if the questions are always crazy, there's probably a respect issue that needs to be rectified. But a lot of times people
That's when you get up and you walk away.
You're like, hey, I need a little space here.
And you come back later. Great.
Exactly. But the truth is, people do have real questions. And, and I think one of the things that makes it so challenging with cultural humility and just with human communication is what makes sense in your mind makes sense to you. It just does. And so it is illogical that so the book has the N word. Why would we keep it? Because it doesn't offend me. No, but it does offend people.
Right.
So
But he's like, but I don't understand why it would be offensive.
It's a word.
Well, I think that
words don't have any meaning.
I think that sometimes
in its historical context, it was probably accurate.
Yeah, I think that sometimes people who aren't from America don't. I think that in a lot of places, and you've been a lot of places. Like, even if you say this is a terrible book, we shouldn't have it in here, you don't really get a say,
right? In
a lot of places. The cool thing about America, and I think that's what happens, is people who come, especially as an adult, into this country, they like, well, you guys are free. Just don't read it. It's a terrible book. Just get rid of it. Like who cares? Like, yeah, it's a terrible book. Just put it back on the shelf. You guys can do whatever you want to do because, you guys are in America because you're free.
Yeah.
You can do that. Right. And so we have to explain to people like, no, we want to culturally move that out of here. And, it's like, but I think I hear that a lot of times from people who aren't from here. They say like, why? You don't want to hear something, or like, I don't like Rush Limbaugh. So why don't you just not listen to him? And I'm like, I understand what you're saying. However, and it's true, right? We saw that a lot with Trump over his 4 years. People were like, and I was like that. I'm like, well, I've never read a tweet from Trump. It's not something that I want to absorb, and I have the freedom to absorb it or not. But I think that what we're trying to do here is we're trying to create a higher standard. even as Americans, I know people from the outside look at us and like, you guys can do whatever you want, but with that freedom, we should be raising the bar. And I think that's what we're trying to do here.
Yes.
I want to put out a question to you guys from Ruth.
We have a great question.
Ruth has a question for you guys. I'm going to put it on the screen so you guys can see it here.
All right.
And Ruth says, what advice would you give to churches that are challenged with addressing issues such as these?
Well, the first thing is we have to reflect everything through the lens of the Bible.
Yep.
And if we can do that, it gives us a framework for making decisions and addressing issues. You know, for example, going back to that book issue, when I addressed the teacher, she said, well, this is a classic. And I had no problem with the book Huckleberry Finn. She said, that's the way they talked back then. And my problem is that it was being forced upon my 10-year-old, 12-year-old child. Put it on the bookshelf, and when they are an adult, they can read it if they want to, you know,
Exactly.
but not as a child. And so when we're faced with issues like this as a church, that will go back to the standard that do unto others as you would have them do unto you. If something is offensive, you don't force it on someone, you know,
Right.
and so, because you wouldn't want something that was offensive to your culture to be forced on you. And so, you know, if we go back to the Bible, the scriptures just guide us in making decisions.
I say talk to Tasha and Will. They can answer that question.
I see. She
took it all and threw it back on us.
Yeah, you guys have helped us implement a plan for POVA, and I think for a church, Ruth, that's having difficulty addressing issues, you have to make sure you have people on both sides of the coin. I know that's tough to do, but you really need to hear both sides and, you know, create an environment for non-judgmental dialogue. That's the first step. And then you guys, you know, you go from there. You'll have to, whatever the issue is, if you have peaceful and righteous listening and dialogue, then, you know, ultimately you can come to some solution, but you have to come to the table. And some people can dig their heels in and be a little bit dogmatic about the fact that they're not coming to the table no matter what, because this has to be the way it is. But that's not everybody. And I'm hoping and praying if you're talking about a church, then you should have, you know, open dialogue first. There's open dialogue and have some ground rules for that open dialogue. You can't come, you know, you just whatever the ground rules are, and then go from there after you have your dialogue.
I love what you guys are doing. What'd you say?
Talk to Will and Tasha.
Oh, you're so hilarious.
She's doubling down. She's doubling down on it.
Yes. Well, I love what you guys are doing as a cultural humility team, because one of the things that you have set is an atmosphere where everybody feels like they feel safe.
Yeah.
But the objective has been clear. You know, you guys decided we're going to listen to each other's stories, not so we can fix everything, but so we can understand each other and get to know each other and therefore love each other and hear each other. And that was the first thing you did before you even thought, let's fix anything. Because if you guys aren't unified and loving each other and really knowing who the person is, then how can you work together to find solutions? So I think that's the first thing that that a church would do, is to set the objective and definitely have everything that you guys said, have people on the left and the right, and you know, so you can hear all sides of the stories and set a safe place. So I think that's an excellent answer, my dear friends. And then Will, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, no, I think exactly what you said was spot on. I think a lot of times we try to take everything on all at the same time. This is what Anton was talking about, that it's overwhelming. We're like, let's change everything now all at once. And the truth is, yes, it all needs to change. Like there's no, I'm not saying any one issue is better or worse than the other issue, but that's not how you have group change, organizational change, societal change. It really does start with trust.
It does.
And mutual respect. And so I really appreciate the example and the model. And I know and we're going to get to see this for everyone that's following this. You're going to get to see this over the next several weeks. All of these couples are very different.
Yeah.
And their experiences are different and their perspectives are different, but they're able to come together with mutual respect. And I think that's such a critical first step. I wanted just to ask you guys another question here. What has been kind of the biggest challenge that you've had just as professionals, as parents, in addressing issues of cultural humility? What have been the biggest challenges for you? Because you've seen a lot in your life and through your respective work in the community as well as, professionally.
Yeah. Again, I think the biggest challenge that I've seen is cultural sensitivity, nurses and physicians, as it relates, it's just the response to different patients. And it's just what it's their background, their upbringing, what they're used to, how they treat certain people, what society says is, most respectful or should give the most respect to this type of person. To understand, to treat everybody the same, again, it's a biblical principle. So unfortunately you have, you don't, in medicine, it would say we do no harm, is what we profess. And unfortunately, we have situations where people, even against a physician, you have people who are just not used to dealing with folks from other races. And so, what it's a challenge. I know when we first moved to Fredericksburg, I think it was not very diverse at all. The diversity we have now, we didn't have 21 years ago. So now, but back then it was a little challenging. It was funny because I thought, wow, they referred to me as the doctor with the dreads. I didn't have any dreadlocks at all. I had twists. But
I literally thought, wow, Brenda used to have dreads.
We missed that.
Wow.
So, yeah, and so it's a big challenge. It was a challenge seeing, I stood out, and it was quite interesting. A lot of different things happened as a result of being one of the first Black females to own my own practice in the area. It was a couple of bumps and challenges from people who couldn't embrace that. It couldn't embrace that. But I had to stay steady on my course, which was to help women be healthy. That was my goal. And I love what I do. So that's the focus. Even now, when you have challenges in the health profession because of your color of your skin or that you're female, whatever the case may be, that still happens. It's just you have to focus on the task at hand. That's the most important thing. And I don't know if you want to share.
Yeah. You were saying that was new to them, but you did your residency at Howard University in Washington. So, when we moved here, that was no big deal for you to see someone be a person owning a practice. And you're just being yourself. But it was, it wasn't the norm here. But I think on the reverse side, being here in Fredericksburg, I grew up in Detroit, predominantly Black community, and then I lived in Washington, D.C. after that, predominantly Black. So, and these are two big cities. So moving to Fredericksburg to me was the first time that I was in somewhat of a minority situation in the community and also in a small town. So I kind of had to get used to this climate and learn what was going on. And so it's been an education for me. And I've evolved to the fact where I'm a lot less judgmental because I had the lens of Detroit, I had the lens of Washington, D.C., and I had to change that and become sensitive to where I am and understanding the people in the Fredericksburg community. And we have great people here. It's just different from what I, grew up experiencing.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I see the comment that Sulma made, just that it truly makes a difference when people grow up in a diverse community, and that she's really grateful for the diversity here in POVA. And I think that's so huge for our kids because, there are definitely forces in our world that are actively resisting diversity and view diversity from a negative perspective. And then there are forces that embrace diversity, but interestingly enough, at the same time, they embrace kind of visual diversity, but there's not necessarily the diversity of thought or the diversity of perspectives.
Yeah.
And so you might see a group that looks diverse, but they're not necessarily all that diverse.
Right.
And so, one of the things we're really striving for as we seek to really follow the scripture here that says, act justly, love mercy, and walk humbly before your God, is we're really trying to be a community that embraces diversity in all of its dimensions and that really extends to the right and to the left. And that has a huge impact on our kids because right now, most people don't see people that are different than them being able to work together.
Yeah, I was going to ask you guys, and it's something I want to, you all four of you to kind of connect with because, you guys have been around church for a very long time. The Hines family has been in the medical profession for a long time. Is this so difficult because this is the first time that we're truly trying to do this? Like you just said, I'm sure there have been plenty of Black doctors, plenty of Black dentists, plenty of Black preachers. Right. But is it only now that we're actually just saying, I really want to understand your experience, not just saying, oh, okay, well, for the sake of diversity or for the sake of, this or that, or some rule that was passed down. Now we have to be diverse. It's not like we're trying. Is it now only now that we're like, this is so difficult because now I actually care. I actually care about your story. I care. What do you say?
Oh, can I speak to that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so POVA has really been great for me because I mentioned my background. In the diversity group, one of the things when I was preparing my story, I realized is that in Potomac Valley Church was the first time I really had meaningful relationships with people outside of my race.
Absolutely.
Where I interacted and really worked with and, became friends with, I went to a predominantly white University of Michigan for dental school, and I interacted with people of different races all my life. However, but it was more, business,
professional,
school, or what have you. But when I became disciple in Potomac Valley, I really did engage with people of all different nationalities and different, different races, and that to me was I didn't realize that, but when I began to talk about it and put my story together, that was really the first time that was really a first for me, and it's been enlightening and great because, I grew up with wonderful parents who never preached any hate or anything. But that just was my reality. I wasn't with racists.
Right. And I think because of that, I think that you guys talked about grace earlier. I think, like you said, like if we can just remember that, like, this is the first time that we're actually actively trying something like this. And, when I have you guys speak to, church families and things like that, because I know some of the struggles that you've told me about just being a preacher, and think, weird looks and why do you get promoted and this and that. But is it for you? Is this really the first time that we're actually trying to, to understand each other fully?
Yeah, I think what I would say, and I'm really interested to hear what Brenda and what Tasha think about it, is I think it's not only that it's the first time, it's that this is perhaps the most dynamic time. And so the conditions are changing. We have a long history, and if we're just going to talk, let's say specifically about race, so there's a long history of racial oppression, injustice, the civil rights movement, Jim Crow. There's all of those things that, segregation, desegregation, busing, all of those things have happened. But right now in 2021 and moving forward, the demographics are changing radically, and it's creating some dynamic tension that I think is forcing the conversation.
Okay.
Because the groups that were perceived as majorities are finding themselves increasingly becoming minorities. And, there's a political dimension and other cultural dimensions that are all kind of at play. And also in churches, this has a profound impact in churches because, like Dan said, at school and at work, you kind of have to work with people from different backgrounds. But church is a place where you get to select who you're going to be with. And one of the downsides to that is that to this day, 11 o'clock on a Sunday is the most segregated hour. So most people choose to go to church with people that look like them or vote like them or think like them or spend like them or in the same socioeconomic group. And so I think it is the call of the scripture for us to all be one family. And it is definitely our intent as a church to pursue the call of scripture, but it's challenging. And so I think, yes, I think all of those things are all happening at the same time. The change in the demographics, the kind of history is brought us to a crossroads. Church is itself at a crossroads. And we can't discount how powerful the impact of media and social media has been to give people a voice. And Dan was talking about this before, that didn't have a voice before. So now you're hearing all these voices right as everything is intersecting. And so I think that this is kind of an unavoidable conversation. Yeah. And so I think it really is important that we broach it with humility. Because we really are very different in our experiences, so that's what I think.
Yeah, actually, I'm with you. I was thinking about the fact that we have to talk about this stuff now because people are talking about it. In the past, even within church, in the past, we just didn't really talk about it that often, and Black people might feel, I'm just using Black people as an example, but Black people might feel like might have felt something in an interaction or whatever and just squashed it and not felt like they could have spoke up about it, or that they would be supported if they did speak up about it, vice versa for a white person, whoever. It's just not something we brought up. It was uncomfortable. It was awkward. It's just something that's hard for us to even embrace, that we have differences, within the church. And so I think this is the most healthy we probably will ever be. I don't think we've been healthy before because we didn't talk about these things. And now that we get a chance to talk about these things, I think we can actually truly love each other like we were supposed to in the first place. I think this is what God was intending all along, is for us to be able to see the differences and be okay with that and still be able to respect each other and also to be able to change. and stop doing things that trigger each other and mess each other up. And stop doing things that hurt people unknowingly. It's time to actually know what you're doing and see how it's hurting other people, and have a heart where you want to change it because you love these people and you know their story.
Yeah.
So I think this is good, though it is hard, though it is awkward, though it is uncomfortable at times. I think this is the best thing we could be doing right now. And I think people need to be doing it more often in their personal lives as well.
Yeah, Brenda, you talked about your colleague. Is that the norm or the exception in your experience in the medical field?
About another colleague who was she's from Pakistani, and I think she's Indian. Anyway, Patel is her last name. I won't give the first name, but she was on labor and delivery, and we were joking about her nieces and nephews and showing family photos. We were all showing family photos and just reminiscing about history. And she was showing all of her aunts and uncles, and everybody is Indian. And then she said, "Oh, but here's my white niece and nephew." And because her sister-in-law married a white gentleman. And so all the nurses, they laughed. And I said, "You're so crazy." So she's very connected with the nurses, and she didn't feel any remorse. There was no derogatory comment. In her mind, it was just, these are my white nieces and nephews who came as a result of interracial marriage. But there was it flowed, and it wasn't any problem with that comment, if you will. And so my point I'm making is that there's more dialogue. There's unveiling, Anton. Did I say your name right? Anton.
Yeah.
It's unveiling. So we had a veil on for so long. It was taboo to have a dialogue. So to answer your question, yes, this is new. So the dialogue is totally new. It's not isolated incidents. It's becoming more pervasive. More people are talking about race. We're doing it in a respectful way. We're embracing our culture. But what we have to do a little bit more is make sure that that culture is now being taught in the schools, in the homes, because you can be so oppressed for so long that you don't even know it. You don't even know that you're not embracing your own culture. You don't even know that your children aren't embracing. Your children are aspiring to be like someone else because their race has been so denigrated for so long. So yes, we're now embracing, who we are, and that's a good thing. And we're embracing others. So like Tasha said, we're all embracing each other. It's just one big happy family, and that's what we want to be, one big happy family. But first, you have to love who you are, and so we have to make sure that our history gets into the schools. Our history is in the homes, and you're presenting it in a loving, humble way where you're proud of who you are and your heritage, and you're sharing it in your workplace in a humble, loving way. You have to share who you are, but you have to do it in a respectful way. So yes, these are new conversations. They're happening all over labor and delivery in the doctor's lounge, and as we walk down the hall. So yeah, we're excited to have the conversations, and we're more connected as a community of physicians because of that. So we're happy about that. And we hope it trickles down, upward, sideways, in every way. We're looking forward to it.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, I think that's so critical. The truth is, we've got a ton of questions now that we need to ask you guys. So we're going to need to have you come back to tell us some more, because seriously. So we really do have to ask you some more, because I think a lot of times we think about our lives in silos, so kind of we're at work, but we're not truly representing who we are. But I appreciate that you are who you are everywhere that you are, that you are proud of who you are, you're proud of your heritage, that you're proud of your faith, and you're sharing your faith. You're having these real conversations in the cultural humility group with people that are in the congregation, with people that are your fellow deacons and deaconesses, but you're also having these conversations at work. And we're just so thankful just for both of you and for your example.
Mm-hmm.
What are some final thoughts you'd leave us with?
Thanks for having this conversation. I enjoy talking about these issues. It's, it's enlightening to us, and we're grateful for you guys.
Yeah, thanks for having us. We enjoyed it. Thanks for probing and digging so we could probe and dig and answer.
Yeah.
Some stuff we didn't think we would be talking about, but thank you for digging and probing. We appreciate it. Yeah.
Awesome,
No
guys.
problem. Thank you so much. We're so glad that we got a chance to have this conversation and got a chance to get to know you a little bit better, to know where you come from and to know what your daily life is like. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Yeah. Great podcast, guys. You guys got any want to get us out of here?
Absolutely. Well, I just want to say the scripture guides what we do. This is the Greater Everyday Podcast, a place where we talk about the real issues. We demonize no one and we deify no one. We just deal straight and honest with the way things are. Micah chapter 6 and verse 8 says, "He has shown you, O man, what is good. And what does God require of you? To act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with our God." We're so grateful that we got to have doctors Dan and Brenda Hines here with us to be able to share their heart, their life, their story.
Mm-hmm.
We're so grateful that they serve as deacon and deaconess here in the Potomac Valley Church and that they're a part of the Cultural Humility Task Force.
Mm-hmm.
If you look in the show notes, you'll find out more about them and what they do and how you can connect and even ask follow-up questions if you'd like to. To everybody that's been following our podcast, both here locally and everywhere, thank you for all the love that you've been showing us. Next week, we're going to continue the conversation. We're going to have some more members of the Cultural Humility Task Force come and join us and share more about their story. We hope that their story, their example, their work will really serve to be a good working model of what we're reading about in this scripture being put into practice. Lots of love, y'all. We'll see you on the other side.
Thank you.
Bye, you guys.
Bye.
Bye.